It is Thursday evening, May 14th, 2026, and this is our monthly update for the SOXL challenge. First of all, I want to celebrate reaching a $160,000 milestone for SOXL. Actually, my portfolio jumped to $163,800 today. The current value of SOXL is almost $100,000 more than my SOXL's value just last month, which was $67,500. That means I hit the milestones of $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, $110,000, $120,000, $130,000, $140,000, $150,000, and $160,000 all since the last monthly update. Currently, SOXL has delivered an incredible 700% return. I'm sharing my SOXL journey with you, covering the past 2 years and 5 months since December 2023. In brief, I started this SOXL challenge with just $500 in December 2023. I initially invested $500 per month starting in December 2023 and continued through September 2024. Then I switched to $7,000 per year into my Roth IRA, which works out to about $600 a month, slightly higher than the previous $500 monthly amount. In this new approach, I can buy aggressively when SOXL is cheap and I can buy much less or not at all when SOXL is expensive. This strategy change was absolutely pivotal, allowing me to buy significantly more SOXL shares later in spring of 2025 when SOXL plunged to those incredibly low prices. The current value of $163,800 will be a stepping stone toward multi-millions and powerfully demonstrates the magic of compound interest over 30 years. SOXL closed today at $186, marking a massive jump from last month's $76. That's a 145% gain in just 1 month. Looking back at the bigger picture, we saw SOXL peak at $74.21 on January 4, 2022, followed by the devastating crash to just $6.21 on October 13, 2022. Then we saw SOXL peak at $70 on July 11, 2024. Followed by that brutal crash to just $7.23 on April 7, 2025. The recovery that followed was absolutely remarkable. SOXL climbed all the way to around $72 not once, not twice, but 3 times. First on January 29, 2026, second on February 12, and third on February 25, 2026. Each time it failed to break above the previous 2022 peak of $74. Then SOXL plunged to $39 on March 30, 2026 during the Iran war crisis. After touching the SMA 200 green line on March 30, SOXL shot straight up since March 31, 2026. Here's an incredible statistic: if you bought at $40 on March 30, you made about 365% return within just 6 weeks. On April 10, 2026, SOXL finally surpassed the previous January 2022 peak of $74. It took 4 years and 3 months to reach a new all-time high from that 2022 peak. This teaches us a powerful and essential lesson: SOXL will eventually post new all-time high prices if we're willing to wait for 4 years or more. From this SOXL daily chart at Finviz, the characteristic pattern is crystal clear: high volatility within a strong medium to long-term rising trend. SOXL now trades comfortably above all moving average lines, including its SMA 20, SMA 50, and SMA 200 lines. 2 months ago in my March update, I predicted that SOXL would eventually push above the $72 double top line in the next few months. I'm thrilled that SOXL broke through the $72 double top resistance line on April 10th. I also think SOXL will push above the recent high of $191 and go much higher over the next 6 months. Although we will definitely have several minor pullbacks here and there. In fact, even just 3 days ago on May 12, SOXL plunged from $191 down to $150 within just 1 day. That's a shocking 22% drop in a single day. This is the kind of SOXL volatility we will see frequently over the next 6 months. You need to be mentally prepared for these wild swings. Let's examine the SOXX daily chart in detail. SOXX is $530 today, sitting just below an all-time high of $533 reached a few days ago on May 11. For those new to the channel, SOXL is a triple leveraged ETF that magnifies the daily movements of SOXX, which tracks leading U.S. semiconductor companies. Today, SOXX sits significantly above both the SMA 50 purple line and the SMA 200 green line. Since SOXX has broken above these critical levels, let's add both the SMA 5 blue line and the SMA 20 black line to our analysis for better context. You can easily see that SOXX is running far above the SMA 20 black line. SOXX is actually riding just above the SMA 5 blue line since April 1st. Since the RSI indicator is pretty high at 74 today, which is higher than the overbought level of 70, we may see a minor pullback soon. Even if those minor pullbacks happen, I fully expect that SOXX will stay above the SMA 20 black line or at least the SMA 50 purple line for some time. In other words, since SOXX is now positioned above the SMA 50 purple line, we have a strong probability of riding above this level for an extended period, just as we witnessed the sustained rise of SOXX last year from April 2025 through November 2025. On this weekly chart, SOXX has maintained its position above the SMA 20 black line since May 2025, demonstrating remarkable strength. Even more impressive, SOXX has stayed above the SMA 200 green line most of the time since November 2010. I fully expect this bullish pattern to continue for many more years. Now let's review my current holdings. I'm not adding new shares this month since I've already invested $20,420 during the first 2 years of this challenge. Going forward, I'm sticking to my plan of approximately $7,000 in annual investments. In my Roth IRA, I'm holding 354 shares at an average cost of $24.71. The current value is approximately $66,000 with unrealized gains of about $57,200, representing an amazing 654% return. My individual taxable account holds 525 shares with a current market value of approximately $97,800 with unrealized gains of about $86,200, representing a phenomenal 738% return. Combined, that's 879 total shares worth about $163,800, significantly up from last month's $67,500. That's an increase of $96,300 in just 1 month. The combined unrealized gains total about $143,400 by investing a combined total of only $20,420, representing a spectacular 702% return. My core philosophy hasn't changed one bit. I will buy and sell based on the SOXL surge strategy. I coined this term SOXL surge strategy back in 2024 to describe my systematic approach to trading SOXL. It's a long-term swing approach tied to SOXX trends based on the semiconductor sector's pronounced business cycles. The strategy has 8 key characteristics and actionable plans that guide all my decisions. For more details, you can watch my video titled SOXL Surge Strategy. Looking at the historical pattern on this weekly SOXL chart, major dips and peaks appear every 2 to 4 years with remarkable consistency. We had major dips at 33 cents in 2011, 99 cents in 2016, $3.57 in 2020, $6.21 in 2022, and $7.23 in 2025. Each bottom is progressively higher than the previous bottom. Similarly, major peak prices also trend higher in each cycle: $1.26 in 2011, $2.83 in 2015, $22.07 in 2020, $74.21 in 2022, $70.08 in 2024, and most recently $191 on May 11, 2026. I expect the peak price in this current cycle will be substantially higher than $191. In this current cycle, my initial plan was to sell a small portion of SOXL when SOXX reaches about $500, or in October 2026, whichever comes first. Although SOXX has already reached more than $500 and is sitting at $530 today, I have not sold any SOXL yet. As you can see in my video titled SOXL Surge Strategy, SOXL can potentially reach anywhere in a very broad range from $62 on the low end to $484 on the high end. Although that's a massive range up to $484, I actually think SOXL can go much higher than $200 in this cycle. So I want to wait a bit longer for the next 6 months before selling any SOXL. Now let me share some important insights about how AI is changing the semiconductor cycle. There are several recent articles showing that AI has likely made the semiconductor sector less purely cyclical, but not non-cyclical. The old 2 to 4 year boom-bust rhythm still exists in parts of the industry, yet AI has created a bigger, more durable demand layer that can stretch or soften the traditional cycle. AI is changing semiconductors in two important ways. First, it is creating sustained demand for advanced chips, especially GPUs, accelerators, high-bandwidth memory, and leading-edge foundry capacity. Second, AI is being used inside the industry itself to improve chip design, manufacturing efficiency, yield, and supply chain planning, which can reduce some of the traditional oversupply swings. However, the industry still has a basic economic structure that tends to overbuild capacity when demand is strong and then digest that excess capacity later. Morningstar still describes semiconductors as a cyclical industry and explicitly warns that AI does not eliminate the boom-bust pattern, even if demand growth remains strong. PIMCO makes a similar point: the sector may become less volatile than in the consumer device era, but that is very different from becoming cycle-free. I would think of this as a shift from a classic consumer electronics cycle to a more secular growth plus cycle model. That means the top line for the sector may grow more steadily over time because AI, cloud, automotive, industrial, and edge computing broaden overall demand. However, individual subsectors can still swing sharply based on inventory levels, capex timing, and supply additions. In other words, the amplitude of the cycle may shrink in some areas, while the winners and losers inside the sector become more differentiated. The most important question is not will there be no cycle, but rather which part of semiconductors is exposed to a cycle, and which part benefits from structural AI demand? Leading-edge foundries and AI memory suppliers may stay tighter for longer, while more commodity-like categories can still revert more quickly when capacity catches up. If AI capex spending slows down unexpectedly, the sector can still re-rate quickly, even if the long-term trend remains positive. In summary, the smartest stance is to expect longer upcycles, less uniform cyclicality, and occasional drawdowns that are still very real and painful. Despite the volatility we're experiencing, my conviction in semiconductors remains rock solid. AI, cloud computing, and high-performance computing are still in the early innings of a massive transformation. Patient investors who stay disciplined through the inevitable ups and downs will likely be rewarded with substantial long-term capital appreciation. That's your May SOXL Challenge update. We're in this for the marathon, not the sprint. If this update added value for you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Stay disciplined, stay patient, and keep building that wealth mindset. I'll catch you next month. Peace out, SOXL family.